14 to 16% of all phone calls are missed every single year. Out of every 100 qualified leads, 45 are not booked. Extrapolate that out to 1,000 qualified leads. That's 450. Think of how much money that is.
I mean, that's just revenue out the door. Welcome to the Change Your Filter podcast. I'm your host, Scott Awesome, and we're coming off of a couple of very electric episodes. And I was thinking to myself, how can we keep the momentum up? How can we keep the energy up? And that is why we have invited Josh Crouch onto the show today. Josh, good to see you.
Good to see you again, Scott. It's been almost a year since our event when we originally met. So it's been, God, time is creeping up fast.
Yeah, I think it has been about a year exactly. And
it's like October of 25, I think. So
I think that sounds about right. And I definitely want to dig into that event. We'll probably dig a little bit into the Savannah Bananas at some point in time. But prior to any sort of banana mayhem, I'd love if you could just introduce yourself to the team, a bit of your history in the industry and where you're at now.
Yeah. So I got my start in the home service industry in 2013. I was actually hired and brought in by an HVAC company as an accountant. I thought that I always loved numbers, data, statistics, and I thought I was going to become an accountant, and I realized it was really boring. So no offense to any accountants listening to this. It wasn't for me. Maybe it's for you. It's not for me. I just couldn't do the same thing over and over again every month. So I ended up operating 3 different HVAC companies. I loved operating HVAC companies. Just every day was different challenge, different experience, different thing to solve. So I did that for about 9 years. I ended up getting really good at digital marketing, of all things. And I got really good, especially with Google Business Profiles and really expanding the reach of those, and started having people ask to help them out. So I was like, well, sure, let's just try to start a business and see what happens. Because I always worked for somebody else. And now we are about a little over 6 years later. We serve about 150 home service contractors in the HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and roofing space, and learned a lot of lessons from that. And it's kind of spawned other businesses from there. It's because it's like anything else. Once you understand the problems people are having, you try to find the problem and then make the solution. And that's really where the current business that I'm focused on getting off the ground, PhoneTAP, has come in, which is an AI call analysis and revenue recovery engine, which of course we'll talk about all the problems that led to that and stuff, but that's kind of where we're at now.
Very cool. And I had a funny kind of similar character arc getting into chemistry early in my career, and I realized I didn't want to be in a lab all the time. So I think certain people just see certain kind of career paths and maybe make the right change to hop off of them before it turns into something.
Well, I think it's being open to opportunity, right? Like,
sure. Because
I could have told the boss, like, literally within like 4 weeks, I was like running the office of this other HVAC company. Because I grew up in a small family business. My dad had a couple taekwondo schools. I ran a couple of those schools for him. So like very small business, but I learned marketing, how to talk to customers, how to sell them, how to, keep them as part of our program and stuff. So a lot of good lessons there, and just realized that numbers were great, but I loved running the business because it wasn't the same thing every day. And I think if you're open to opportunities, I think sometimes people are so afraid to change, and they're just like, no, this is what I'm good at, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to stick there. But sometimes that opportunity on the other side of the door that's not open yet is a great opportunity. And sometimes you just got to be willing to at least take a look and see what's going on over there, because it could change your life.
Sure. Are you still doing any taekwondo to this day?
No, but I'm actually, so our youngest is 15. She has her learner's permit and driving us everywhere. So and she's in club soccer and in school soccer, like she's busy. So we're always driving with her. But once she gets her license, my wife and I've talked about getting back into martial arts, but jiu-jitsu, something I've never really done. I've rolled around on the mats a few times with people, and I've always been kind of intrigued because it has nothing to do with striking. It's all submissions and holds and things like that. So it'll be a little different than what I did for 25 years with Taekwondo, but looking forward to getting back in, because the martial arts they're just fun. They really are.
Very fun. I know it's a lot of forms and stuff with Taekwondo or general sparring. So jiu-jitsu you got a lot of respect from me on that one. I don't know that that's something I'd be stepping into, and just to make sure I've got an overall sense. So I know we're Relentless Digital. TAP is short for Trade Automation Pros. PhoneTAP, kind of the newest iteration of that, really focused on that phone experience that customers are getting. What else keeps you busy day to day? Do I have kind of the umbrella there?
Our own podcast, which we've had it almost takes a back seat a little bit because you always have something else to build on. The podcast is more almost like the fun business, because you just get to meet and interview cool people and see what we always know what's coming down the line with new technology and stuff. Because our podcast we've transitioned a lot over the last 2 years to focus on AI automation, efficiency enhancements, things like that. And then hearing both from people that sell to contractors and contractors that have implemented those things and what changes those made for their business. So that's normally what I'm doing on Wednesdays, is recording our own podcast. But I have been on, you're the third podcast I'm on today to talk about these problems that we're trying to solve. So I'm kind of flipping the script today and not being the guest or the host, but being the guest.
Well, I appreciate you running the marathon podcast session for us. I love being able to hop off of just normal sales calls and hop into one of these and just have a bit more of a conversation about where things are going and what you're seeing in your corner of the industry. And speaking of your specific corner of the industry, talking about phones and starting this off just holistically, what are you seeing when you go into a small, mid-sized contracting shop and you're first getting engaged with their phone call process and how they're actually working in that? Do you find that they have a good sense of what's happening in their phones? Do you find that there's frustration? What's the general experience like right now?
Yeah, the general experience, most business owners, managers, high-level leaders don't know what's going on, especially small to mid-size. I would say once you get past a certain point, that obviously becomes a focal point, because those companies don't get to 10, 15, 20, 50 million without understanding what's going on in every facet of their business. But it's the ones from 0 to 10 that don't know. They're either growing by reputation or growing because they know a lot of people, or growing just because they've been in business a long time. They're growing almost in spite of themselves sometimes, and they don't understand what's holding them back from growing even faster, or maybe not even growing faster, but just being more profitable and not having to spend so much money on marketing and new customer acquisition. And that's really where, I first started spotting, well, one, I've been a CSR, I've been a dispatcher, I've been in the office. I understand a lot of times the office just doesn't get the same love. We always trained our techs, always. Our salespeople, our techs, we always train them religiously every week. And then I realized because I thought that was normal. That's normal, right? We train the people who are in the homes. What we didn't do is we didn't train the people on the phones, ever. We just assumed you can pick up a phone, you figure it out. You give them a little tiny script and it's fine. How hard is it to get a homeowner's information and say, do you want to call at 12 to 2 or 2 to 4? In theory, it's not difficult, but today's consumer has also changed a lot. There's a lot of information at their fingertips. They can pretty much find pricing information. You guys know this because you guys have been one of the ones leading the charge on that, because every other industry has pricing online except for us. And that's a problem that obviously Will and then Paul, when he came on, you guys are working to solve, is get this more in front of homeowners, so that way people can buy more stuff from you and you don't even have to visit the home. And which I think is a brilliant play. And I love the philosophy there, but we still have, in the customer journey, there's still so many drop-off points, and the phone and that first entry point is the biggest one. And it's also the one that falls where there are more leads falling through the cracks. And that was one of the first things I realized when we started tagging calls with Relentless Digital, is two things. 14 to 16% of all phone calls are missed every single year, no matter what. It's always 14 to 16%. It's been that way for the last 3 or 4 years now that I've looked at the data. Of the ones that are answered, the average booking rate, and we have some really and obviously our client, some of this may depend on your client set and stuff, but we have clients from 1 million to 20 million, roughly. We have a couple above, couple below. 55% booking rate, almost every year. And that's 55% booking rate of qualified opportunities. So that's out of every 100 qualified leads, 45 are not booked. And you think about that. So now extrapolate that out to 1,000 qualified leads. That's 450 times whatever your average ticket and whatever your technician's close rate is. Think of how much money that is. And those are really easy math you guys can kind of put in yourself. But our top performers are at 70 to 72%. And these are really good, well-run companies. But the problem is in the home service industry, the data inside of our field service management software is usually at 80, 85, 90. So we think, we're pretty good. We don't need to work on that. It's a combination of human error, people not knowing why this needs to be classified as a lead that's not booked. And two, the people who are commissioned or spiffed or bonused on their booking rate are in control of deciding if that is a lead or not. And so if you think about it, it's kind of like giving, the keys to the kingdom, because hey, no, that one wasn't really a lead. It was just a price shopper. Well, they needed something. They called you for a price and you didn't book them. That's a lead. And so we have to have accurate data in order to make decisions. And that goes for anything in business. So that's really how PhoneTAP came about. Is about 2 years ago, Tersh and I got together because we had the podcast and we had people we would go to speak and we had nothing to sell. So we go speak on AI and automation, all this stuff. And we're like, so what do you guys sell? And I'm like, we don't sell anything. we sell information because that's all we have. And then we're like, this would be a really cool problem to solve because there was the Rilla was out and some of these sales coaching analysis tools. And again, the technicians and the salespeople got all the love first, all the private equity money, they got everything. And the CSRs and the people in the office just didn't have anything that could help them become better at their performance. So we kind of went the other way with that. And that's where PhoneTAP was built, is to help not only understand an actual accurate up to the minute call booking rate. What are the biggest objections? How are the best people handling those objections on your team? And then also, how can we recover that lost revenue? And what is the lost revenue? And there's some ways that we go about doing that by looking at your actual data and stuff like that. But that's really how this all kind of came about. And that's why we have all these businesses. We're just trying to solve more problems for more people. And that's really how it comes. And sometimes I wish we had 30 or 36 hours in a day to solve them all, but we don't.
That's phenomenal. Getting a lot done with the 24 that you do have. And some of those statistics you threw out earlier, really make my heart sink. 14 to 16% dropped calls is ridiculous. That's just revenue out the door. So, that's an obvious one, but we go deeper.
Since we moved to Arizona, we've hired a ton of people to help with things, different contractors and stuff. And my goodness, it is hard getting a hold of someone on the first try. We have to usually call 3 or 4 companies before we get a hold of someone. And it's usually whoever the first person that gets back to us is the one we end up hiring, which is really sad to say. If the only qualification you really need for a homeowner that doesn't know you from your competitor is just you're the first person to get back to them, it sets a pretty low bar. And the fact that people still can't climb that bar is a problem. And it's just, it's such, in every home service industry is ripe with opportunity for this. If you're just really good at that thing of getting back to homeowners and customers and good communication, you're going to set yourself way apart from everybody else. But we don't obsess over it enough.
It should be absolutely top of mind. And a stat that actually I just saw 2 days ago now that really stood out to me. Home Advisor says that 78% of the time, the contractor who bids first wins. Just that simple.
I've seen studies like that too. There was it was a different marketing company, Valve and Meter. They're based out of Indianapolis. In 2022, they did a study. They actually contacted, I think they did, I don't remember if they did it through form submissions, called about 500 home service companies, and they waited to see how long that it would take for them to reply back to them. And I think 40% of the 500 never replied at all. I think it was form submissions is what they were testing. I'm just like, my goodness. I'm like, last year or 2 years ago, we had a CSR coach on our podcast, and I'm in the Phoenix area, and it was June or July when we were recording it. So he's like, would you be okay if I did 3 live calls on the show and see how they answer the phone? I'm like, wow. I'm never one to say no to a good idea. So I'm like, let's do it. First 2 didn't answer. Third one answers. And he was going to say he had a 20-year-old system just to see how they would react. They didn't even ask him how old his system was before they said they're too busy to get to him today. And you think about that. Now, if somebody calls and they got a 20-year-old system in Arizona, what's getting replaced today? Most likely it's going to be the AC, and it's going to be an expensive replacement. And they didn't even know. They didn't ask. They just said, we're too busy. And busy with what? Are you busy with maintenances, 2-year-old systems, 5-year-old systems? There's a priority order to all of this stuff. And that's where it's so nuanced. I think we look at call booking rate as the main number, but within that number, there's a lot of nuance of how you can manage those calls so you can focus on like the term that everyone uses, dispatching for dollars, but I don't know if everyone quite understands what that means. It means dispatching to the best calls, the highest opportunity calls, not the ones that are 2-year-old systems that were installed by somebody else. That's not ideal because we all have the same amount of spots open in a schedule every day. So let's maximize our opportunity, which is going to give us more gross profit, more net profit, more operating costs, and hopefully more actual profit to take home to reinvest back into the business and buy vehicles and a shop and all these other things that come along with it. It's just, I think seeing the industry from like the view of being in an office and seeing things run and how that runs to now seeing it from a couple different angles gives me a different perspective on just how stark the opportunity is for people that really focus on these couple KPIs and they focus on them consistently week in and week out.
So, I mean, number one, we talked about pick up the phone. That one's obvious. My dad worked in medical sales.
It would seem obvious, but 14 to 16% of tens of thousands of calls would say otherwise.
I remember, especially back during COVID when I was working in outdoor products and selling outdoor products, plenty of our competitors simply did not pick up. And I told that to some experienced sales folk that I've worked with, and it just doesn't even compute with them. I mean, number one, don't be letting stuff slip through. But now we're getting some of the basics in. We're at least picking up the phone and talking about kind of moving down that funnel a little bit. And I'm very curious about the dispatch for dollars, idea that you laid out there. But one question, we brought it up earlier too, pricing. If somebody asks for pricing over the phone, obviously that's our domain and what we do heavily at Contractor Commerce. What are your first instructions to a CSR when that obvious question of how much is this going to run comes up?
Yeah, so I'll go over how it's normally answered, the calls that I've listened to and stuff. Normally somebody asks how much is it to come out? Oh, it's going to be $89, and that includes whatever first hour labor, or if $89, but if you do a repair, it'll be free. And then they stop. They don't say anything else, and there's silence. Homeowner says, "What do you think the homeowner says, Scott?" After you hear that,
well, what could the system cost?
That or, okay, I'm going to check around and call a few other people. I'll call you back.
Sure. Or you're not even getting the time.
That's the more common one, is because one, you built zero value. And right now, the only thing a homeowner knows is I want to get someone out to my house as cheap as possible because I don't know what's wrong and I don't know how much it's going to be to fix it. And hopefully it's not expensive, right? That's what everyone's hoping. But that's how that question gets answered a lot. Oh, it's $89 or whatever the fee is to come out. And they build no value. They don't tell that they have essentially a mobile warehouse on wheels. Nothing about the company story, brand story, why we're different. We are about our technicians, about how much they're trained, yada, yada, yada. There's a whole way to build value there. And they never just continue. Once they answer the question, ideally you would continue and would 2 or 4 o'clock work today for you? Go in and give them an option, change from them leading the conversation to you leading the conversation, because whoever's asking the question leads the conversation. That's why you're the host of this podcast and I'm the guest. You lead the conversation. I follow you. Same thing on the phone. The person asks, if the homeowner is the one asking all the questions, they're leading the conversation. But if we ask the questions as the contractor, we lead the conversation and we generally are going to get an output that we want. But I think the problem is we're just kind of like defaulting, oh, customer wants to know price, I'll tell them a price, instead of having a strategy for that. And on top of that, I have always, and we used to do this at the last HVAC company that I worked at, is we used the dispatch fee, service fee, whatever you want to call it, as a lever. If we were slow and it was $89 and somebody pushed back on that, I was putting them on hold, talking to my manager, and I was getting rid of the fee or reducing the fee or whatever. I was getting to that house one way or another. Now, if we're busy and somebody's got a 6-year-old system and we don't think it's really a big complicated issue, and we can't get to them right now, like legitimately can't get to them, we might have a surcharge or a fee to get to them like later that day or tomorrow or something like that. But to me, it's a lever. It's not a static fee. It's a strategic fee to weed out some price shoppers and also keep your schedule full. And I think more people are like, no, I always hear that it's this fee, no matter what. I'm like, okay, but you lost customers because of that. And then you come tell your marketing company you need more leads. That's when where our team starts talking about, do we really have to, if you're that slow and we generated a lead for you, Shouldn't you just get it on the calendar? Like, is $91 or $89 or $79 or $49? Is that gonna blow your business up? Is that gonna change your financial outlook of getting that fee? No, it's not. Because you're not going to sell anything until you get to the house, unless they're shopping online for a new system or they find something like an online store, like what Contractor Commerce offers. That's the only other way to really get them to buy anything before you get there.
And your point about questions leading the convo was a really interesting way to set that off. And I'm still kind of thinking about this concept of, whoever's asking the questions and consistently is going to be the one leading the convo. And we talk about this in sales as we're selling software products. But in this context, if you're sitting there and just fielding questions from a homeowner, and then there's an awkward silence and you don't have that follow-up, you've let them lead the conversation. You've let them lead it straight into a wall after a couple of steps. And it sounds like that's a more common than not occurrence. And I want to make a quick segue there and relate the two, because a lot of folks are talking about these AI CSRs, AI tools for doing these things, and they're phenomenal in what they can do. Obviously, after hours, 2 a.m. answering, there's just the logistical issue of that. But one of the first things I think about that is you ask questions to the AI. So you're leading the conversation, and sometimes it will try to follow up with questions to you, but ultimately that's almost delivering that leadership role to the customer whenever you're using AI too much. But with that being said, there's obviously a great product market fit in certain instances. What do you, working in the AI space and working in the automation space so closely, what do you see as areas where that works very well and can really amplify this process, expand on this process with the CSRs? And where do you think that we really need to have this personal touch that you've been referring to?
Yeah, ideally, an AI answering service, that 14 to 16% missed call rate would go to zero, right? Because we always have an overflow system. Especially if you look at like Google local service ads, they literally will ding you if you don't respond. That's literally how the platform is built. Like if you don't respond fast enough, they will ding you, and you won't get as many leads. You think about that from a business perspective, like that's telling you Google looks at that as one of the highest priority items we can do. So I think that is one solution for that. It would be great because I've also been, the first two companies that I worked at, I always had the on-call phone. I was answering the phone at 7, 8, 9, 10, midnight, whenever the calls came in. So it is nice to be able to let your team have their life back. At least after a certain point, I would say like 7 or 8 o'clock, like cut it off and have AI answer most of those, or a human answering service. But so there are some really nice benefits to that, where you can improve your culture so people aren't answering the phone at 2 a.m. on a Saturday or whatever. They can actually enjoy their weekend, just take the calls if they come in, if you do after hours service and stuff. But for me, it's all about analyzing the data and supercharging our team. There might come a time, probably closer to like 2030 and beyond, where we have some real different conversations about what AI can handle and what should and shouldn't handle. But I also feel like the more news stories in the news cycle that are about AI replacing jobs, people are going to start, if you have AI in your company and they see that you have an AI voice, they're going to probably resist working with you. That's a hunch that I have no data to support that whatsoever. But if I think about how humans work, we're irrational, right? If we lost a job, or a loved one lost a job, or a friend or family member lost a job because of AI, am I really going to want to work with a company that leads with AI, that replaced my son, daughter, brother, sister, mother, dad? Probably not. I'm going to feel some resentment to that. And then, of course, some markets just have older demographics and they just don't love that. They want to talk to a human. We still had people at the last HVAC company come to the shop to get their filters and come to the shop to pay their bill in cash or a check. Like, there's still people out there doing that. And if you throw AI in them, they're like, what is going on here? Like, they're just so confused. And I think as we get deeper into the data, because the first, when we started analyzing calls with PhoneTAP, we also analyzed the AI answering services. There's some pretty interesting stuff there, because existing customers book at a pretty high rate with AI. It's very comparable to a human. New customers book at like 10 to 15 percentage points lower, which, if you think about humans and how we work, new customer doesn't know you, doesn't know if they could trust you yet. And then we're hearing this thing that we could probably tell is AI. And we're like, I don't know, is this just how they operate their company? It's kind of weird. Like it doesn't feel warm and friendly. And so there's some things I think strategically we can do with our businesses once we get into data like that is all new customers go to our best CSRs, bar none, period. Now, if we're busy, we can overflow existing customers maybe to AI because we know they're still going to book at a similar rate. And now we will free up our best people to be on the front lines for all of those new customers, which is what every business wants, is a new customer. And then that would ideally keep our new customer acquisition costs down because we put our best people in front of the best leads, the ones that we really want to get, and we can grow our business that way. But in order to make those types of decisions, we have to be armed with data and not spend dozens of hours analyzing it ourselves, because we'll analyze it to death and we won't get anywhere. And I think that's where it's like, if you're going to implement anything in your business, and obviously we're talking about phone calls, but this can go into your inventory system. Like, think about how many purchases you make per year, trying to analyze that yourself. What if you knew the best things to keep, and you could keep less inventory, but the right inventory, so you don't have to carry all that overhead and all that extra expense, and you could just carry the right stuff, the stuff you know you're going to use in your truck stock. You can get rid of all this stuff that, so a lot of times technicians want to keep like the variable speed motor that they need like once a year on their truck. I've had guys, I got to keep one because if I need one on a weekend, I can't get it. I'm like, how often does that happen? Like, come on, you're taking up truck space for something we need 2 times a year for the entire company. And so like things like that, you can make really good, smart decisions, and it can be backed with analysis that we don't have to do. And analysis is not really something most humans like to do a lot of. At least I don't know a lot of people that do.
Yeah. And people, especially when it comes to, taking that example of the variable speed motor you're talking about there, people sometimes underestimate the carrying costs of these items. And even in a warehouse, it can be 7 to 12% or so. So you take 10% of whatever that VRF or whatever else can cost and hold them for a couple of years, or they get damaged on the truck, and that can be a really major issue.
Filters are great. I know you guys,
yes,
obviously,
they are.
That was one of the first things I knew Contractor Commerce sold was, the number of times filters got damaged on our trucks.
Oh, yeah.
I'd open the truck and be like, dude, what did you do to this thing? It looks mangled. Like, it doesn't even look like a filter anymore. And we'd be carrying that stuff around. And then, of course, the customer wouldn't be happy with it. And then so now we're not only buying a new one and replacing it. So we lost that inventory, and then a labor to go get it. Like, it's astronomical. These costs, we take them for granted because they're not like in front of our face about how much time we waste. And I think these are just fantastic. Like, why are we trying to replace people when we can't even analyze this stuff? We should be analyzing this stuff first, see if there's a need to remove people, but why not try to help them do their job better first, then decide. Then you can make a decision because you have all the facts. Hey, I don't really need this person because of X, Y, Z. Most likely you're probably not. You'll probably keep that person because you realize that their job was just set up inefficiently to begin with. And now they're like a superhero. You only need one person to manage a huge fleet, or one person to manage a huge inventory or a call center, because they can do the work of 5 people listening to calls, because they can analyze hundreds of them in an hour versus taking days to do it.
Yeah, it's so important to quantify some of those things you were just talking about, because a lot of it is by feel, and naturally some things will just be by feel. But talk about filter inventory, what you're sitting on, what might get damaged there. That's one of the easiest lead-ins for us is, have you tried filters? Of course we have. Did you stop? Yep, because they got banged up on trucks and they took up too much space. And so, you want to be able to quantify that. And it reminds me a lot of just what we're doing on the phone side of things, and sort of putting our weight where it matters and figuring out how to put some numbers to these things. And, that kind of brings me back to something you mentioned earlier, which I really like just the phrasing of it as well. But I'm curious to get more of your take on dispatching for dollars. Obviously answer every call, be upfront, have a good interaction, lead that conversation by asking questions. But now as you're really learning how to dispatch for dollars, you're breaking this up between your best performing CSRs or CAs, making sure that they have the new leads, and maybe politely kind of de-ranking or de-emphasizing some of these other, a 2-year-old system installed by another company or something to that effect. When you think of dispatch for dollars, as a whole, what is your stack ranking for what drives the most attention?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it depends on what the business specializes in. Like if you get into like plumbing and electrical, obviously like some electricians want to focus on generators, some want to focus on panels, some want to focus on EV chargers. But really understanding what that model is for you and how, what is a good panel to replace? Is it 20 years, 30 years, 40 years? Like what's the age of that? So you can start to understand. Now, obviously that's not the same demand. Like HVAC's got and plumbing to generally have much more stringent demand because like if something's broke if water's leaking somewhere, you need someone today, generally speaking. People for plumbing, they don't wait more than like a day or two to have service. Electrical, they'll wait because it's not always like the biggest hindrance to their life. But HVAC, if it's hot, it's cold, like it's hot right now just about everywhere, they're not waiting. So they're going to call around. Like if you can't help them, they're going to call. There's I don't want to say there's no brand loyalty but if they're hot and you cannot get to them and you're the company that serviced them the last 10 years, they're not going to sit and wait. I can promise you they're not going to sleep in an 85-degree bedroom. It's not going to happen. What we have to do is we have to prioritize those calls. And I get some questions on this sometimes because people are like, well, what about if our existing customers call and stuff? I'm like, well, strategically, if you had a great maintenance program in the spring and the fall, 50-60% of those customers would be taken care of already with granted, stuff can still break, but if you have a good maintenance program and you're thorough and you always put out those options for things that are outside of manufacturer's specs, you should be able to catch a lot of that stuff. And then when it comes demand season, it's time to take everybody else's customers because they can't get to them. And then you get to pick and choose who you want to bring on, which ideally would be older systems. Or like we were in a market in Port Washington, Wisconsin, when I was still in the HVAC industry that had a lot of old Carrier and Bryant systems. Bad heat exchangers were very common. We mopped up. Like we always knew what to look for, and we looked for the crack in the heat exchanger. We bought cameras and stuff that could help prove that for us. But we just knew anytime someone called in, they said they had a old Carrier, old Bryant, we were going, because it was almost always a system replacement and they were out of warranty and stuff like that. So just understanding what that looks like for your market and planning around it. Like you got to ask that question early on in the conversation on the phone, because if you don't know what you're getting yourself into and you have no idea what the age of it is, you're setting yourself up to go on someone else's install and the parts are still under warranty. So you're going to get the $99 labor charge that the manufacturer gives you to fix that. That's not worth your time and your marketing dollars to go on that call. It's just, you're not going to make money on it. And you're going to be maybe break even at best.
Yeah. And it's, critical to make sure that something you mentioned earlier, that you're available for these new accounts, and that you're not so overwhelmed with just the maintenance of any administrative anything, whether that's current customers or whatever else on the office side of things, that you have the bandwidth and the freedom to be ready to be opportunistic whenever a new something presents itself, when there's a new challenge you can meet in whole, or it's just the busy season and things are breaking, and making sure you're proactive there.
Yeah, and it's funny, like I know most people that listen to podcasts and stuff have heard like Brent Buckley and some of these other sales guys have done really well. You know what calls they do really well on? Maintenance calls, not demand calls. Because demand, let me think about it. If it's like it's going to be 115 here on Friday, most people just want to get that AC fixed. They don't want to be down all day because they got to replace it, right? Because who wants to be down when it's 115 and the temperature is raising in your house really quickly? So they want to fix it, and then maybe I'll revisit installation, or if you can get me in today, maybe we can do it. But like Brent Buckley, he was like, what, 8 or 9 or 10 million in a year? Most of his were on maintenance calls because they spent their time there. They took their time. They took care of the customers that needed that stuff before it was a demand call. And something that I'm a huge believer in, because I've been nurturing customers for a long time, like even for Relentless, I nurture customers more than ever. We do 2 emails a week. We do webinars for our existing customers. We do all kinds of stuff to help educate them. And even in the trades, we did a lot of emails back in the day. Text message marketing when I was in trades wasn't quite where it is today. I got a lot of FUs when I did text message marketing 6-7 years ago, because people were like, the only text messages that were going out at that point were political ones. Not like every brand was texting every time you bought something. But nurture your customers, like take care of them when you can. You already acquired them as a customer, so take care of them in February, March, and April. If you're an HVAC, take care of them when your schedule is open to take care of them, because you'll keep your team busy. You will find problems. You will find opportunities to replace systems or proactively maybe add things like duct cleaning or water treatment or some of these other ancillary services that people want, but they don't want to do it when the water's leaking all over the floor. They're not thinking about water treatment when that's happening, but you can educate them because they have time for it. And then you take care of those customers, your customers, when you're not busy. Take care of everyone else's customers when they're busy. So that way customer acquisition cost goes way down and you don't lose so many customers. Like, I don't think I know there's been some like numbers thrown out there, like 15 to 20% of customers for an HVAC plumbing electrical company are lost a lot, like almost every year. And this just the turnover in customer list because we don't ever reach out to them. It's like going to, like your favorite massage place or anywhere you've enjoyed going, and they take your money once and then they never reach back out to you and try to educate you of like how you can take care of your home so you don't have to pay that bill again, or hey, it's going to be really hot. This is the things that you should prepare your house for just in case. Things like that, just really easy things to do that will build that trust and that value and that trust for your business. And that stuff can pay huge dividends. It pulls over into Facebook groups, into Reddit threads now that are becoming more popular. And all of a sudden you become the trusted name in the market just because you are always willing to help and educate everybody. You're like the teacher in front of the class. That's why I like to call it like the teacher in front of the classroom. Like if I'm standing in the back of the classroom and I'm trying to educate the class, nobody's going to listen to me because they're like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But if I'm standing in front of the class and I'm educating them on why this is important, they're going to look at me differently. And that's, I mean, to your point, like you mentioned before we went live with AI and automation, Tersh and I have been educating people for years on this. And without us even trying to like promote ourselves, but people look at us like leaders in that side of the space because we just try to help and try to give information that we've learned and we pass it down and we share it. We don't keep it to ourselves. And I think that's a big thing. Like all these business owners have so much knowledge. Just share it. Share it on video, share it on a post. Like get out of your own way. Stop making excuses why you can't share this stuff because it's so valuable to everybody else. You think it's boring. It's not boring to a homeowner that doesn't know. They're like, oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know you did that. Or I didn't know that that's what you find when you go into the attic. I'm like, oh, my attic looks like that. Like you can do some really cool stuff with that people are like, wow, I probably need to have my attic checked out because there's like bugs and rodents and all kinds of stuff up here that I don't know are living in my house.
Yeah, and you know who that actually reminds me of from the TAP conference? Marcus Sheridan. He was sharing a lot about this, and I know he's got a competitive product to contractor commerce, but this is one of his big ethos.
Marcus has got a lot of stuff going on.
He's got a lot of stuff going on
everywhere. Like everywhere I turn, that guy is. He's amazing.
Well, it's impressive the way he gets out there, and you know, to his credit, and one thing that I'm looking to really emulate is just that kind of radical honesty. You know, obviously you have to, within reason and in a professional sense, but he was talking about, you know, some of the first articles where it was like, what does a fiberglass pool cost? What does this cost? And people, you know, a lot of the times people in the industry will say like, that's absolutely nuts to do that. But meanwhile, you have the customers themselves demanding so heavily that they meet this stone wall of, we got to get out and do all these things. And to your point earlier, people just go. It just doesn't matter really. So and they're sending people away on that initial experience by not being honest and not being upfront. And then what you're talking about here with maintenance and driving that customer lifetime value, it's incredible how much these things that are industry standards elsewhere, and I won't even say industry standards, just business standards across the board, following up on your customers, figuring out ways to continue to deliver value to them in time. It's just something that's been lost in a lot of the trades. So we're talking about, you know, things like filters or things like just membership programs, you know, driving lifetime value with the customers that we have. And then, to your point, if we're able to get our people taken care of and get our core customers taken care of and not have attrition there, then we're on our toes for those new customers, and we're on our toes to be able to go out and get that new business. So it's really, there's a couple of sides to it at the beginning and the end there.
Well, and I think it's important to understand the changes that have been made by, I'll call them the powers that be, the technology companies, Google, Apple, you know, all these other companies that are just behemoths. But Look at what Google's done in the last year. They have added a feature on Google Maps to have AI call your business to get pricing information and availability. So that's telling you that they want to know cost, and homeowners are searching for cost information. And then they added, like, if we go and type in you can type in AC installation, AC repair, something in the search bar, there's a little bubble that's below the search bar where you can click, it says online estimate. The search results change completely when you do that. Completely. Like, it's a whole different list of people, unless those same businesses that ranked on the first page also had online pricing tools, or at least had a blog or something talking about price. Mm-hmm. Like, I literally, before this call, I had one of our plumber clients in Dallas, Fort Worth. She reached back out to her client success strategist who asked me a question. He's like, so apparently that water heater blog that we talked all about, because I asked questions to the contractor. Contractor answered the questions, because I'm not answering their pricing questions. I will tell you that much right now. I'm not getting in trouble for answering their pricing questions and being too high or too low. But working with a marketing partner that's going to be willing to do that stuff, that blog's blowing up for them. They're getting a lot. Now, they don't have an online pricing tool yet, which is the next conversation to have, but they're realizing that people really like this information, and then they're getting a lot of traffic because they're willing to put the thing online that nobody else in their market's willing to do. So now they want to do it for drain cleaning, for sewers, for other services. And we're coming to a point where we have to put the information online. It's no longer do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's not a good idea? I remember when I did a very unscientific poll on my Facebook profile, maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, maybe, about should you have pricing online or not? And it almost like, I could have asked them if they were Democrat or Republican. It was like 50-50 split. Like, it was like people were so angry or so excited. And it was kind of a wild, I didn't really mean to do it as an experiment. I just meant to see what people were thinking. And I remember it very starkly because of how just the comments that I got. And we're past the stage of should you do it? It's now we need to do it, because people search for costs all the time. They search for costs on digital marketing companies. They search for costs on everything. And the reason they ask for price is not because they're cheap. They don't know what else to ask. So what they default to is something they understand, which is money. And they want to keep more of their money, but they want to get the thing done. So they ask, well, how much is it? They don't know what else to ask you. They don't know what to ask. They don't know how to bring up the make model of your unit to the call. They don't know how to ask any of that stuff. So they ask price. And that doesn't mean they're cheap. It just means that's, there might be something that's top of mind for them, but we can always have an option for that. We have payment options. We have flexible finance terms, things like that. But they do care, and they do want to know before somebody comes out to their home. And I think someday in the future, we'll probably have, a lot of sales are 50%, 60% of the way there before you ever get on site. They're already going to kind of know what the price range is. Then they're going to decide who they want to do business with based on the people, based on the feel they get from the brand, how helpful that person was, the experience, those sorts of things. But I don't see we're not going backwards. I can tell you that right now. Humans crave information. I was just looking at Google's, I can't remember, CTO or someone really high up in Google, and maybe it was the CEO, was talking about Google search, because people think if ChatGPT is getting more search, Google's going down. And it's not true at all. People are searching more than ever in more places than ever. And I don't see that stopping either, because I think about I told you I was in Italy for 10 days. We were on ChatGPT, Claude. We were asking all kinds of questions of different language things, scanning a menu, trying to understand what this was on the menu so we knew what to order, or tell me the history of this building, because they said it was built in 800 AD. Tell me the history of it. There's so many things you can search. And now that we can search it at our fingertips, we want to search more. We crave information. And so the more we get, the more knowledgeable we are. And then we enjoy the experiences more too. So sorry, that was a long run on there. I got a lot to say, but just wanted to put a couple points home, because I think some people are like, well, search is dying, or none of it's dying. It's all growing. There's none of it's dying. It's evolving.
We've really gotten to the point, like you said, Josh, where this is people are looking for this answer, and they're not going to go away from being able to get it. And for people who are here towards the end of our episode, 3 most effective things you can do on that front: get your Google My Business profile marked up with quotes. Look at schema markups. If you don't know what that is, go to schema.org. That is a huge way to signal. And most importantly, get an online store, actually offer the pricing, offer the experience. That's what we do here at Contractor Commerce. But those 3, Google My Business, schema, and then getting your own store. That's my recommendation always. Josh, before we sign off here, what's the best way for folks to find you, and anything else you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I'm really easy to find regardless of what business you want to hit me up on. I'm usually on Facebook most often, but if you want to dig deeper into your team's call center and understand what's going on and just how much potential revenue you can recover. When we do demos of PhoneTAP, we actually hook up into your Service Titan account. We analyze your data and we come up back with your numbers, not so like the average tickets and stuff are different for every type of company. So we're actually going to look at your data and show you how much revenue you're missing specifically. We're not using industry averages or dummy data. We're using your data. So you'll get a really good baseline for that. And then obviously you can make a decision if it's worth tackling that problem or not. But we at least give you the keys to make the decision, and then you guys can understand if it's a big problem or not a big problem in your business.
Awesome. Well, Josh, thanks for being on the show. Great to see you again.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.